Hi, I'm Brandy Kelly. Welcome to the Lead with Hope podcast. This podcast is dedicated to educators who need a little hope and inspiration. Tune in and see how you can lead with hope each and every day. This bi-weekly podcast will inspire and empower you to lead with hope.
Hello, Morgan. How are you doing this morning?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
I am doing great. It's so fun to have you on today. I want to just start out by telling everybody that Morgan Kelly Roberts is my daughter. She is my firstborn, and we're going to start out this podcast this morning with her telling a little bit about her story, who she is, and why education is important to her.
All right, sounds good. Well, as my mother stated, I am her firstborn daughter, and honestly, there's really nothing too exciting about my story. It's very traditional in a sense. I was born and raised by two strong Christians, a dad who was self-employed and an elder of the church, and a mother who was a social worker at the time. And for those of you who didn't know, she was actually my youth pastor for about 3 years while I was in high school at the First Church of God, while they were looking to find a backfill there. So have a lot of fun stories there that I'm sure we'll get into in the future. But just a little tidbit if you didn't know about Brandy Kelly, she also leads young youth. To kind of go in a little further, I was raised with a lot of the same values, obviously, from my mom. She's highlighted them in other podcasts in the past. I think that she's done, a lot of the two big ones are faith and family. After graduating from high school, I went on to get my bachelor's degree in business at EIU. Originally, I had planned to go to be a chiropractor, but after I failed my first class of chemistry, I decided that wasn't the path for me. So I remember sitting down with my mom and my dad at the time, and I asked them, "What do I do? I obviously am not going to be able to continue here unless I, step up my science skills." And at the time, my mom said, "Well, why don't you go be a pharmacist?" And my dad said, "Well, don't you need chemistry for that too?" And he said, "Morgan, you're good at math. Just go get a bachelor's degree. It's very generic, and you can pretty much do anything with it." And honestly, he was pretty right. So appreciate his recommendation there. In May of 2015, I did graduate with that degree. And then fast forward today, I'm a wife, a mother of a 1.5-year-old, a regional sales director at a Fortune 500 company, and an avid member of the First Christian Church. And then now, today, I'm endeavoring into a new entrepreneurial world with my mother. I would say, as I step into kind of the viewpoint of education, growing up with a mother who was social worker, then principal, and now superintendent, even growing up, education, it was just important to say, hey, go get a good job. Go make sure you're educated enough to where you can be successful. Right now, being a mother, it takes on a whole different meaning for me. It's basically, taking the step of how do I ensure my child does well? Obviously, I want to make sure he reaches his goal and goes into his full potential. But I think it also gives me a new perspective to make sure that the people in place to help educate him are good faith-based leaders as well. To help him not only accomplish those goals, but also be a good person. A man after God's own heart. So not just textbook sense, but making sure that, he's right from a spiritual sense in building God's kingdom and getting to heaven, because that's obviously the overall goal.
So when you think about education, I hesitate to even ask this question, but I'm going to anyway. Your background, having an educator as a mother, how did that affect you growing up?
I would say the best word to put it into was analyzing everything. So, I think that also plays into, as my mom was an educator and didn't take a traditional education path, right? You weren't necessarily a teacher, although you did teach in a sense. But as a social worker, I think you gave me that lens of education of how do we better groom the children of the future to where, whatever trauma or tragedy that they faced or whatever they're going through in school, we're able to help piece them back together so that we can build a better future and so that they can be successful. And so I think kind of analyzing everything in my childhood is kind of where I would put that, just because as a social worker, I think there was a lot of Why did you do that? How does that make you feel? And so I think that's very important too, because I think that allows children, and even adults to take a step back to be like, oh, I did this because of this, and how can I do it better next time? And you learn from that. So I think that's really the education piece that you were mentioning.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing you say is a lot of self-reflection and improving your self-awareness along the way. And it's interesting to me because, obviously I have a doctorate in education. Your dad has a high school diploma and he's been a successful entrepreneur. He owns his own business. But looking back on my childhood, both of my parents dropped out of high school. Neither one of them had high school diplomas. So I do think that um, our backgrounds do affect our futures and the futures of our children, and just looking at our life experiences, it's just interesting. It's interesting to reflect on that and see how it's affected not only yourself but also those around you and those that you love and those that you serve. So
Yeah.
very interesting viewpoint, Morgan. I appreciate you sharing that.
I will
Now,
say I think you threw a curveball though, because normally they do say I think the statistics are if your parents graduate from college, you are more likely to go on to get a master's or a doctorate. And I think you threw a wild card in that one because I stopped at a bachelor's degree and you went on to get your doctorate. So, congratulations again on that. I know that was fresh this year, but um, not going to get my doctorate. So don't have that expectation.
You never know. I was in my 40s before I got my doctorate, so anything is possible. But again, the landscape of education is changing, and I think anything is possible. Um, and it'll be interesting to see how education changes over the next 10, 20, 30 years. It's a very, very different time, especially since the pandemic. A lot has changed in education. So, pivoting, Morgan, to my next question. This one is a little bit more serious. In December of 2020, in our family, we had a crisis. Your son Jensen was very sick, and we really didn't know why. So, do you want to tell our listeners about this situation and how you found hope in those trying times?
Yeah, definitely. So, like you said, last year we were kind of going into the holidays. We had what, a 3.5, 4 month old at the time. He was
Mhm.
attending an in-home daycare, and so we were still working, our very busy careers, getting ready for Thanksgiving, getting ready for Christmas, the best time of the year. And so right before, or maybe it was right after Thanksgiving, Jensen did come down with RSV, and so he had a lot of the symptoms that you would expect with RSV. He had, fevers, coughing, runny nose. So took him to our local pediatrician. They gave us their recommendations. Basically, the short of it was continue to monitor him, make sure he's drinking fluids. It's a virus, so there's really no way that there's no antibiotic that he can take. So, we took him home, put into practice all of his recommendations. It seemed like he started to get a little better, and then really kind of 2 weeks before Christmas, he just started kind of throwing up, and I'm talking like projectile vomit. And I know you saw it too, and it was just one of those things where
Mhm.
we're like, what is going on? Um, Got to the point where he wasn't keeping food down for most of the day. So called our pediatrician again at that time. He recommended that we go down to the local hospital at Cardinal Glennon. So that was, I think we were close to maybe, yeah, that 2-week time frame before Christmas, and so took him down there to get
Mhm.
checked out. They had admitted us overnight and kind of just thought he was dehydrated just from gastronitis is what they actually said that he had, which is just a stomach bug. And so they said, let's put him on IV, kept us overnight, and then the next day they released us. So we were like thinking, hey, this is great. He got through the stomach bug. We can go on and, enjoy our holidays, and we're in the clear. So we actually were on the way home and we stopped and got some lunch because they released us right around that time. And he had threw up just a little bit in the car. And so we were kind of like, hey, he's 4 months old. Was it vomit or was it spit up? We don't know. We were trying to be, hopeful in the fact that it might have just been, a little bit of spit up. Anyways, so we get him home, and then the weekend was a little rough, but it wasn't as rough as what we had seen. He was still keeping some solids down, some liquids down. And then it got to about that following Monday where um, he just kept throwing up and throwing up again. And so I had started to notice a little bit of raised soft spot, and kind of had questioned that. And so we took him back into our local pediatrician, or I did. My husband was at work at the time, so I kind of called in and went in there and they checked him out, and they basically said, "Hey, go down to Cardinal Glen again. We've got to figure out what's going on. We're not really sure." So after about, I think, 9 hours in the ER that Monday, we finally had figured out that he had a little bit of intracranial pressure. And so, long story short of it is, they had identified that due to basically a trauma at birth, which was his umbilical cord was wrapped around his neck, it caused a blood vessel to burst, which left some debris, or whatever you want to call it, some particles behind, and then basically his fluid that is supposed to go down into your stomach and go down that way, the way we were designed, was building up. And so they said the RSV kind of heightened that, but basically they had to figure out a way to drain that fluid because that's what was causing him to throw up so much. And so on December 22nd last year, they actually took him back for surgery. They had identified that the best, kind of solution was to put in a subdural shunt. And so they went in on the 22nd. It seemed like it took them, 18 plus hours. I think that surgery was about 3 hours waiting in the waiting room. And so after that time, luckily they came back and they said all was good. Everything looked great. They even continued to tell us that there's more of these cases than we actually realize, especially in some children Jensen's age. So we were just glad that kind of God had his hand in all that. He gave us the wisdom to really identify what was going on. Because like I said, very early on, we had no idea. I mean, there were a couple ideas that we were throwing out of thin air just from what other people have experienced. I think we were the first of anyone we've known that had kind of seen that happen. But to be honest, kind of lost hope in the middle of all that. But I think as we were coming out of it and knew that Jensen was okay, and, a lot of the people that kind of touched our lives in the meantime, the nurses at Cardinal Glennon, a lot of them were just the sweetest and really took care of not only our son, but our entire family that was in there. And so, around Christmas, it's hard, but that kind of helped me regain the hope. And then I think as we finally got home and having more conversations with others and, stories from there that, hey, yep, this has happened here that we didn't even know of before, I think brought back that hope. And so really grateful and, thankful that everything went as well as it did, because it could have definitely been a lot worse at the time. So God had his hand in it, and we now have more hope than we could ever imagine just coming out of that. And hopefully we can share that with others as well, based on that story.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think back, it's just been a little over a year ago. So much has changed in that short amount of time. A year's really not that long, but going from him being so sick to him walking and beginning to find his voice and enjoying all the toys that he got for Christmas this year. It's just been such a joy to see him grow as he has overcome that trauma. So very inspirational, Morgan.
Yeah, this Christmas was definitely better. I wouldn't trade it for last Christmas by any means, but thankful for the outcomes that we had, thankful for God's hand in it, and thankful that now Jensen gets to tell the story of how good our God is and how he helped him have, a full life ahead of him and a bright future.
Yeah, for sure. So, thinking back at that time, Morgan, it's so easy for us to ask that question, why? Why is this happening to me? And like you said, sometimes we don't know. But it is so important then to share your story and to give hope to others. So I'm glad that you're able to do that today.
Yeah, and to be honest, I still don't know the reason why that happened, but probably never will. But at least, we know our God's bigger than anything, so we don't have to always have the answers. And one of these days, when I reach the sparkling gates, it won't even matter. I won't even be asking those questions. So
that's for sure. But it's good that you're able to share the story and you're able to give hopefully some encouragement for people that might be dealing with some kind of an ailment or a trauma or a tragedy. So, like I said, I'm glad that you're doing that today. Now, we are working on this side business called Lead with Hope. And Lead with Hope is a system of self-efficacy. H is for habits, O is for optimistic outlook, P for passion, purpose, and perseverance, and E stands for excellence. So for you right now, what resonates and why?
I probably am going to answer that with two. Um,
Okay.
just because I do align most closely lately with excellence. And I think I have even dating back to my childhood years. Whether that's excellence with sports, being the best, or, trying to meet expectations of not only my teachers in school, trying to get the best grades. I just remember too in school where you have races to get the candy bar or the soda if you did multiplication the fastest. And I was always, striving to get that candy bar. So excellence has always kind of been ingrained in me. I think it also doesn't help that I'm a very competitive person, which is a blessing and a curse. And I don't know if it's genetic or not, but pretty sure my dad's pretty competitive too. And I'm sure you got a little streak in yourself as well. But I would say my second answer to that is what I'm striving for and hopefully I align with as I go into 2024. I want to start focusing on the habits and developing good habits so that I can not only continue to reach excellence, but also making sure that my cup is full so that I can best fill other cups.
Very well said. I like that answer. So as you think about 2024, how do you plan to lead with hope?
So, like I said, I think, making sure that I have good habits in place to ensure my cup's full so I can fill others. I think that's something that I'm going to make sure that I have in place. And I think habits go along with priorities, making sure that you're giving the time not only to your career, to your side hustle, but also to family and, to God, and making sure those priorities are in the right place, God, family, work, whatever else makes you happy. It's kind of funny though too, because the definition of hope is actually a feeling of expectation or desire for a certain thing to happen.
Mhm.
And so I think it kind of goes hand in hand with, if you're not full, how can you set that expectation of hope? So, with a full cup, it'll also help create a compelling vision. It'll help you communicate effectively. You can be resilient and you can lead by example. And so I'm going to lead how I would want others to lead if I were following them. And I think along with that is just making sure that you lead with joy, having that other, piece of it, having excitement, achievable goals, and just, recognizing the success of others as well.
Absolutely. It's very well said, Morgan. I really like that answer. And I think that service to others is what is most important in this life. Um, we only get one shot at this life, and we do it with each other. So we need to take care of each other and take care of ourselves. As you're thinking about the future, what are you excited about? What's a passion project that you're working on right now?
I would say the project I'm most excited about going into 2024 is a new series that you and I are actually going to do together with our Lead with Hope. It's called The Cup of Hope. So every week I will get to enjoy the company of yourself, and we're going to help fill other cups. So we're working to do a 3-minute clip each week showing inspiration to others, whether that be through scripture, devotionals, educational wins. Other people's wins, business wins. We're going to get feedback from other people too of kind of what they want to see. So I'm really excited for that. Not only the fact that I'll get to spend more time with you, but also by the fact that we're going to be able to help others go into each week with a sense of hope that maybe they didn't have. I know there's a case of the Monday blues every week. I get them too. And so
Mhm.
I want people to be excited. And so I think this is something that will hopefully give that excitement, give that hope. And so we're going to be launching that in 2024. And yeah, I'm really excited.
I'm excited about that too. And like you said, doing it together, that's the best part of this whole venture, is being able to spend more time with each other, to collaborate, and to share our sense of hope, which comes from our faith and our family, and all of the stories that we will be sharing, things that we've overcome in this life. And I hope it's an encouragement to our listeners. So, Morgan, to finish out this podcast, why don't you tell our listeners how they can connect with you?
Yeah, I am helping my mom with the Lead with Hope. So you can always message us on that Facebook page or Instagram at the Lead with Hope handle. Otherwise, I am also on my personal accounts, Instagram and Facebook. I'm on Facebook under Morgan Kelly Roberts, and then I'm on Instagram at Morgan Kelly with 2 Ys.
All right, Morgan, this was fun, and I look forward to releasing this in just a few weeks. Right now, we're getting ready to celebrate New Year's, but the release will probably be in about 4 to 6 weeks. So looking forward to releasing this and working more with you in the Lead with Hope framework. So have a happy New Year.
You too. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Leading with Hope is an intentional practice requiring self-reflection and self-awareness. Check out my website at leadwithhope.net and subscribe to my monthly newsletter. My newsletter provides 3 tips, 2 quotes, and 1 question that will help you build self-efficacy and lead with hope. Thanks for tuning in today, and have a great day.